Pulkit, are you able to see me?
Yes, sir. I can see you. I can hear you also, sir.
बहुत अच्छा है, आपका टाई तो बेहतरीन है. You are
धन्यवाद
the
सर.
you are the son of an army officer. तो उसकी वजह से ये सब nattily dressed. और आप जो है आर्मी पब्लिक स्कूल चंडी मंदिर में पढ़े थे ना?
हाँ जी
तो
सर.
हाँ, वेरी गुड वेरी गुड. तो फिलहाल आप कहाँ से बात कर रहे हैं, पंचकुला या समवेयर एल्स?
सर मैं फिलहाल गुड़गांव से बात कर रहा हूँ.
गुड़गांव में आप काम करते क्या?
हाँ जी सर, मैं काम कर रहा हूँ अभी.
अच्छा, वेरी गुड. व्हाट काम एंड व्हाट इज द नेचर ऑफ वर्क? उसी से शुरू करते हैं.
Sir, right now I'm working in the educational technology edutech sector. Earlier I had worked for 1 year in DRDO in 2016. And
बेंगलोर
after,
में.
yes sir, GTRE. Then after that, from 2018 November to March 2020, I was initially working in edutech sector itself. Then after my recent mains in January 2021, I again started working.
बहुत अच्छा बहुत अच्छा. तो आप जो है you gave up a very good job according to me. DRDO तो काफी बाहर से देखने के लिए गुड कैरियर, लेकिन आप अंदर थे तो आप ज्यादा जानते हैं. So what exactly prompted you to quit DRDO at that stage?
Yes, sir, I was very happy and very fortunate to work in DRDO, and I was very proud of it. But I left DRDO because of the exposure that I would get if I go and prepare for civil services. Another reason was that since childhood, somewhere it was ingrained in me that sometime I wanted to prepare for the civil services, and I could not balance my preparation with the responsibilities that I had at work. Hence, I decided to leave my job at DRDO, sir.
अच्छा, to give more attention. तो ये करिकुलम डेवलपर थे आप दो साल के लिए, और अब क्या कर रहे हैं? वही करिकुलम डेवलपर और समथिंग एल्स?
Sir, right now I am developing a course on project management.
Very good. So you are working for some edutech. So what exactly is it? A coaching center for civil services? What exactly does it do?
No, sir, it is a startup which is working in terms of providing digital or improving education by providing digital solutions. They work in content development. Initially, I was working in the previous stint, I was working with respect to building content of mechanical engineering course. And right now, this is also part of that only. And in that, they usually make interactive books. By interactive books, I mean that it will be more informative with vis-a-vis the conventional books. In this, the diagram will be more dynamic, more colorful. So in these aspects, they try to have a better influence over the student who is trying to learn any of the subjects.
So it is a printed book. It is not one of those electronic digital books.
Sir, it is a digital book, because when we go for interactive book, we use the platform, we use the languages that we have, and by that we make it more interactive. It is definitely a digital book.
Very good, very good. So this you are writing a digital book or preparing, running a course or planning the content of what should be the if there is a course on project management.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am the overall person responsible for this product.
So you are designing a course.
Yes, sir. Designing, as well as I am overall responsible for a particular content, as well as starting from everything. I have the overall responsibility for it. I have a team for which I work.
So how long do you think this course will be, if there are applicants who will pay the required fees and actually undergo?
Sir,
duration.
Yes, sir. I was given the target for a 40-hour course, curated as per the needs of the universities and the MBA courses that we have in the country.
Okay, so this is my last question. What, according to you, is this project management? For a layman, I am not an engineer. I'm not a person who ever undertook any project much less managing the project. So, आप बताइए.
Sir, the project management is the kind of art of managing projects. And definitely, sir, you would have taken many projects in your life, because a project is something which gives you a unique output by the inputs that you put in. And if we look our life itself, it is summation of various projects that we undertake. And the main feature is that it will be having a definite beginning and definite end, and it will be giving a unique output.
So you are not contemplating specifically an engineering project like construction of a road or airport or a factory or something like that. That way, even preparation for civil services is a project. But
yes, sir.
आप जो 40 घंटे का जो कोर्स बना रहे हैं, उसमें क्या-क्या ingredients होते हैं content?
Sir, if we talk about project management, we have to look at it is a scientific study now. Like if we talk briefly, project could be seen as part of 5 steps, starting from initiation, then planning, execution, monitoring and control, and closure of the project. So these are some 5 areas which are identified, which you will find in any of the projects. So based on this, scientific studies have been developed. There are certain steps given there, which if you perform, your project will be executed in a more rational and scientific manner. And we are having various studies also, like financial management needs to be taken care of, like we need to take care of scheduling. So these are the various components which go as a part of the course in this particular course which I am developing.
This is last question, part B. हमारे बचपन में जो है, we used to have things like PERT and CPM, critical path method, and project evaluation review technique, etc. वो आजकल अभी relevant है या they have become totally irrelevant and disappeared from any content?
Sir, although their significance is not as significant as they were in the, we can say 20 to 30 years ago, but still they are relevant, especially for small projects where we are not able to afford expensive softwares. We are having improved techniques like GERT and others which helped in a much better way. But for taking a project in a costly, effective manner or having a preliminary understanding, we do study it, and that is also even part of the scheduling aspect in the planning phase of the projects.
Okay, then now I'll hand you over to our former Chief Secretary, who is in the IAS and who handled many projects, mighty projects, thousands of crores. So, Dr. Gopal, he'll take over.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Good morning, sir.
Singh, good morning. Can you hear me, see me?
Yes, sir. Perfectly, sir.
Yeah, but please tell me to take the question of the chairman forward. Just one more question. When there are ready-made softwares available like MS, Microsoft projects, and several other projects which can be customized to the requirements of the customer, where is the necessity for you to develop and repeat the whole work and develop another software?
Sir, I'll correct myself. I am not developing a software in this regard. I am developing a course with respect to on the part of creating a content with respect to that, what should be part of it, presenting in a manner which will be more receptive for the students. So this is the aspect, sir.
All right. If you have to evaluate a student after the training, whatever number of weeks that you give, what will be the criteria for evaluating the candidate as the best or above average or average?
Sir, in evaluation, I can use the Bloom's taxonomy in this regard. I can give a set of questions which are on the nature of comprehending whatever has been taught. Then I can give him set of questions which are part of application of what has been taught to him. And third in the hierarchy will be giving him a kind of a project or a mini project on which he can utilize the knowledge that he has gathered. And this will be the hierarchy along which I will like to classify a person who is undertaking such course.
Okay, good. You are staying in Gurugram, working there. Have you heard of the RERA bench of Gurugram? RERA.
Sir, that is the real estate. Are we talking in this regard?
Yes.
Yes, sir, I have heard of it.
What is that? What is the full form of that? RERA, you started right.
Sir, I cannot recall the second part, but I think there was an act in 2016. After this, they made it more they gave it a formal nature to in order to provide more benefit to the customers because of the malpractices that had emerged in the real sector. And this takes care of those aspects, especially in cities like Gurgaon, where a lot of growth has taken place. But at the same time, a number of residential projects were not completed, or the customers were even cheated in some instances. So it is looking into that aspect, sir.
Okay. If the customer or the builder, in fact, it also works towards the builder's interests. If either of them is not happy with the judgment of the RERA, the decision of the RERA, what recourse does the Act provide? Do you have any idea?
Sir, I don't know specifically, but I do have an overall idea, because RERA will be a tribunal case. And if it is unable to solve, I think you can definitely go to the higher judiciary. That is the normal course by special petition and other aspects in the first in the high courts, then in the Supreme Court.
Okay. Before that, they have to approach an appellate authority. Real estate.
Okay. Sir, I'm not aware of that aspect.
All right. So you are from Haryana, and you must be knowing that the Supreme Court had suspended the 3 farm laws and appointed a committee. Okay. Now, committee has also given a report to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court is still to act. Now, in spite of all this, why do you think the farmers in your part, Panchkula and other parts, they are still resorting to agitations and creating law and order problems, inviting trouble for themselves? Don't they have patience to wait for Supreme Court's orders?
Sir, I think the whole issue can, in fact, reflect significantly about the nature of farm practices in my part of the northern part of the country. The first aspect I can identify is that in this particular case, the farmers were mobilized at a very rapid pace, and somewhere the farm leaders right now want to utilize it to, in fact, ask for other demands like the MSP demand, which was not even present in the farm laws. The second thing I can identify here, which is very pertinent to the Haryana Punjab region, is the role of the artiyas, or the middlemen we call. They have a significant skin in the game because of the revenue that they get from the operation of mandis. And in some cases, it has also been identified that even they are supporting these agitations. And because they have more funds at hand, they are able to mobilize farmers in this regard. So this is another distinct reason that we can identify. And the third thing I can identify is, once this issue took a political course, now the political parties also want some kind of populist measures coming out from these laws, and so that they can claim that they are always at the forefront when it comes to the right of the farmers.
Now, do they think that they can also pressurize the Supreme Court to give in and give judgment in their favor?
Sir, rationally speaking, I think the farm leaders are very well aware about the constitutional procedures. They won't be thinking in this regard, but yes, definitely making a pressure group has other effects, and it's quite possible at the root itself, the parliament might look for a different course. Especially we'll have to wait for the UP election, which will be also giving a direction with respect to reception of the farmers with respect to these laws, and it might shape the government's radical step in this regard also, sir.
Okay. Can you describe to me as to what exactly is this MSP?
Sir, MSP stands for it acts like a ceiling price, and it is I cannot expand it right now, sir. It is like maximum support price, I could recall it now. And in this, the government as a policy offers a minimum price below which no procurement can take place, and as a result of which the objective is that it provides market opportunities, assured price to the farmers, so that there is no distress sale by the farmers.
So when the minimum support price, it's not maximum. I think you are confused a little bit. All right, it's not ceiling, but it is a minimum. All right. Sorry. But when the government wants to give minimum support price, now why do the farmers want to again insist on giving a minimum support price? And why should government procure the produce of the country at minimum support price when there are others who are willing to buy at a higher rate?
Sir, firstly, thank you for amending me. I can recall right now. It is the minimum support price. It is the flooring price above which the transaction should take place. Now, sir, talking to the aspect of the demand of the farmers, right now, MSP is as a policy which can be seen as an entitlement given by the uh, extended by the government, and there are many issues with respect to this. Practically saying, there are reports which disclose that the market prices are even less than it, so it has not been effective in its objective. Another is, by giving a statutory right, making it as a statutory right, it will make government even accountable for providing it. Otherwise, right now it is just as a policy measure. So farmers are seeking that if it comes in the statute, so they will have a more ground in terms of asking for such rights.
But do you think that the government of India has been purchasing the entire paddy produced in the country, the wheat produced in the country at MSP throughout the country, or is it only applicable to Punjab and Haryana?
Sir, as identified the Santa Kumar committee, this is effective in Punjab and Haryana, and there also it has not 100% that entire thing goes through this policy. And especially in other parts of the country, they have identified that only about 6% of the farmers take benefit from this regime. So right now also it is not very effective, but as said, in Punjab and Haryana, it has been much more effective vis-a-vis others. So this is also a contributing factor in terms of the mobilization of the farmers in this regard.
Right, good. Now, tell me, the Haryana Punjab farmers have been agitating for support price, all right. But then when it comes to the question of, polluting Delhi air through stubble burning and, not doing anything about it, in spite of government trying to give some incentives, why do you think the scheme to give incentives against stubble burning has failed in Haryana?
Sir, what I believe is, for a common or a small marginal farmer, his own economics is much more better. He is able to understand his economics much better than understanding the issues that the region faces because of this. The underlying reason in this is that he finds it more cost effective in terms of going for practices like stubble burning. Right now, yes, we have developed alternatives in terms of providing the super seeder and happy seeder through the customer hiring centers, as well as developing the alternative use of the rice stubble. But still, sir, it has not been effective in terms of making a ground level change. But if we talk about in recent times, there are schemes, particularly one scheme by Haryana government is notable, whereby they will be awarding the village panchayat, which is able to achieve or reduce significantly these aspects to the tune of amount around 1 lakh. And this will be something which will have some kind of social nudging aspect in terms of curbing it, and incidents have come down, and optimistically it will be arrested in the coming times.
All right, all right. Now let us talk about the concept of smart cities in Haryana. There are some cities selected. Why not your own city, Panchkula, your native city?
Yes, sir, Panchkula, because it's already a developed city. It has been planned very meticulously, and I think the objective of smart city was to develop the infrastructure in cities which were requiring it. And it's very fortunate that I come from a city which is already having very well infrastructure facilities in this regard. So maybe because of the optimization of resources that they were seeking in this regard, they had not selected Panchkula in this regard.
Do you mean to say that in Panchkula, without resorting to sumps and pumps to pump drinking water to the first floor, second floors, in the apartments, through pressure, the water is supplied and you get 24 hours water supply in Panchkula, if you say it is a developed city?
Sir, in this regard, yes, definitely there is challenge with respect to some aspects of urban development. But again, when we talked about smart city, it was carrying a handsome sum of around 500 crore by each union government and the state government. And I myself think that this amount can be better utilized if they seek for developing other city, and Panchkula's specific issues can be taken care of by other targeted projects.
So you think for want of resources, Panchkula is not able to supply 24/7 water?
Sir, I think it is not the only cause. I think because of the rising pressure that we have seen the immigration in Panchkula in recent years, it was not planned for that much population. And other is, if we talk about the Haryana region overall, we are seeing a significant stress in terms of availability of water.
So you feel Panchkula is relatively better than other cities? That's it.
Sir, in Haryana, in
Okay.
these aspects, it's definitely better than the other.
Okay. Now, you are following agroforestry practices being developed as a hobby.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me, have you heard of Miyawaki style of plantations?
Yes, sir. It is a Japanese technique of afforestation, which I think it got some significant traction in the last 2 years.
What does it recommend?
Sir, I am not very well averse with respect to what are the techniques and practices. I can just recall the.
So which practice from your study or observation, which practice of agroforestry is really appealing as far as you are concerned?
Sir, what we are doing is the traditional silvo forestry. In this, we are somehow trying to have a combination of a kind of a more lasting crop, which is for about 5 to 7 years, in combination with the traditional seasonal crops. And this is according to the prevailing conditions in our region that I am interested in this. I am not thorough with the other aspects. So this is something which I am aware, and I am very fortunate that as I come from a farmer's family, I am able to have some kind of knowledge in this regard, apart from continuing with my preparation simultaneously.
Okay, before I pass on to my co-panelist, can you tell me what is the difference between a privatization and a public-private participation method of taking up projects?
Sir, in privatization, the phenomena goes like originally it could be part of the public or the government, and because of various reasons, one could be in terms of generating more finances or capital, the government does away with its rights and it brings in the private players in this regard. When we talk about PPP is a kind of a undertaking certain activities like infrastructural development by bringing in or having a synergy with a private player, for which it will be definitely compensated. And so this is the significance. PPP is on project basis that we go about. And when we talk about privatization, in this, it brings about change in the ownership of the firm itself.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Hi, Pulkit.
Good morning, sir.
Very good morning. You come across as a very interesting person, given your varied background. You just said you own some land and you come from a farming community, and then your father served as a Subedar in the Indian Army, and then you are a mechanical engineer, but then aspiring to become a civil servant.
Yes, sir.
Quite an interesting scenario this. Now tell me, typically people, coming from Haryana, Punjab, and particularly Western India, most of them, particularly if they have their background, army background or defense background, they normally take to, these services. How is that you have chosen, something different, to beat a different path altogether, and then studied engineering, and then now want to become a civil servant? Did your father not, give some kind of an inspiration, or was he not your icon?
Yes, sir, he was definitely my role model, and in fact, I was also very fascinated in joining the defense forces. But unfortunately, in my 12th standard, when I appeared for the NDA exam, I could not qualify through with my SSB.
Okay.
And simultaneously, at the same time, fortunately, I was studious and good at academics. I even cracked the joint entrance exam and secured a seat through it in an IIT. And that time I thought that, yes, this could be a even a good opportunity for me to go about it. And even my father said that yes, if you are able to secure this, and he always believed that whenever you are doing something, you should seek for more exposures. He believed that going as a civilian, it will be giving you more exposure in your life. The army life you have already seen when we were living with him, and most of the learnings, although I was not directly involved with the forces, but he told me that your lifestyle has been such that many of the learnings you are already having it, and definitely going on this path will help you. And so thereafter I joined my course, and sir, it has been part of the evolution process that now I am aspiring to be part of the civil services.
Okay. Now, having been raised in a environment, with a army background, what is that, the final takeaway from all that your father had gone through and transmitted to you?
Sir, first is I have developed emotional intelligence because of the frequent transfers that we used to have in 2 3 years. So I learned about being flexible and adjustable to such kind of life, especially as a kid when you are very emotionally attached to your friends, schools. So you have to make frequent changes with respect to that. Second is, sir, with respect to my personal life in terms of discipline, I had got inspiration by seeing him, as well as he has also made sure that I imbibe such practices in myself.
Is that probably part of the reason why you also joined NCC?
Sir, that time it was out of my own sheer curiosity when I was in school. We were fortunate that in army school we have a good structure with respect to this. And since my school days, I always aspired to have all-round exposure. So I had joined it because of that.
Now tell me, NCC, as one, looking at it from outside, how has it been contributing to, the overall impact, either in terms of, raising a very core of disciplined individuals or youth, or what exactly has been the contribution of NCC to, overall nation building?
Sir, one significant contribution apart from the objectives of making students more disciplined and directed, I found is with respect to communal harmony they promote, especially through the integration camps that they have, whereby you have to live with different people coming from the various aspects or the various sectors from the country, rural, having rural background, even coming from a different state if you go for a national camp. So that is very significant, which at that tender age gives a very good exposure in terms of adjustment. So apart from this, I find that even it is a very good platform especially for people who aspire to have career in forces, and it has given a structure so that people can aspire through it as well. So these two things I
Okay,
identify very
yeah.
distinct.
See, yeah. What I gathered from what you said is that, it serves as a feeder channel for, entry into armed forces, number one, and number two, it makes an individual quite, secular in his outlook, right?
Yes, and that too
Yeah,
at a age where he
yeah,
is
very
more
impressionable age and
formidable.
all that. Yeah, impressionable age. But then, what has it been having any multiplier effect on society as a whole? Because you see, Pulkit may be a very secular person with a broader outlook of, plurality of the ambience in which we are now living. But is Pulkit in a position to spread this to others?
Sir, I have not done it myself in terms of doing it, but definitely even when they are bringing out change with respect to the school students or the selected few who are joining it, it definitely brings a reformative aspect. And later on, I have seen like many of my friends who had pursued it later on, and they even join schools as an NCC instructor, and these aspects. So it has a kind of latent benefits. I'm not claiming that directly it brings out a holistic revolution in the society, but yes, definitely those aspects itself are very significant.
In terms of, having a ripple effect in society, that is precisely my point. Whether it is, purely confined to, the groups within NCC, or does it have, some kind of a ripple effect, which can be better used, to preserve the multicultural fabric that India is.
Sir, from my own experience, what I could identify, especially the cadets who are coming from rural background or the hinterland, they were more enthusiastic vis-a-vis these aspects, whatever they were learning, vis-a-vis the others who were coming from a very fortunate background like me. And I had seen that they had undertaken various campaigns when they went back in their own locality. For us, we were fortunate that we had not to take such kind of efforts ourselves. It was more of personality building, but yes, definitely there's a section of society whereby they also contribute back to through various aspects.
Have you ever thought of, deploying, the NCC boys and girls in, scenarios like where there are some communal problems, and deploying them as, ambassadors of peace and amity or communal harmony? Or are they
Sir,
merely confined to, the NCC parades and, events and all that?
Sir, in the camps that we used to have, we were definitely prompted to undertake such actions, bring out some changes like undertaking activities like adult. From those days, I can remember they used to prompt us to take activities like adult education, be part of sanitation programs. And in fact, our schools used to invite such cadets whenever they used to take such activities like cleanliness drive or other aspects. So definitely there is a role, but I think it might not be in an organized manner and undertaken at across the country,
I
but
know.
there
Have you ever thought that, the so much of energy that is positive energy that is available in NCC is not fully utilized, because, you see, you are indoctrinated with, very high idealistic values of communal harmony, discipline, integrity, unity, and all that. But where is all that energy going?
sir, I
But
think special
particularly in a plural society like India, day in and day out, at the drop of hat, we have problems of, communal conflicts, misunderstandings, sometimes leading to violence and all that.
sir, definitely, sir, what we are seeking will be very fruitful for our the society, and I believe especially the B certificate and the A at the A certificate level, they do take such things. But I think the experience that I had at school level, I think NCC at that particular stage is more targeted towards the child's development vis-a-vis resolving such issues. So this will be which I will be admitting. At that stage, I don't find it appropriate also because uh, at that particular age, the student itself is
Yeah,
not very having a holistic understanding.
yeah,
But definitely at the graduation level, they do take up such projects, and I think it's a very good suggestion by you in this regard.
yeah. Okay. Now, see, some countries have what is called this conscription. Why is that, we in India do not have conscription? Are there any problems?
Sir, I think I don't find problems, but I find it rationality behind it
Mhm.
because I think when we talk about armed forces, we should be more concerned about the merit or the fitness of the particular person who is involved in this. And I think we are having a significant force whereby our armed forces are having a significant strength to tackle any situation that we might encounter. And secondly, sir, I think when even at the level of the fundamental rights, because of the liberty a person should enjoy. So India has not taken that aligned view. And if we compare with the countries like Israel, which is having a conscription policy, we do not have such kind of existential threat that we limit the agency of the students or the citizens to contribute significantly in this regard. So I find that these three reasons because of which we are not going for the policy suggested.
But conversely, don't you think we have a huge standing army, and is it not a burden on the exchequer?
Sir, I find even the challenges are also Gregantian in this regard. If we talk about the strength, I don't find any other country which has these kind of border challenges, even emerging maritime challenges. And at times, we have to also think about the internal security aspect also, whereby we seek their help. So I find that because of the proportionality between the amount of challenges that we have. So the strength is also
Adequate.
Proportion.
Proportion. Okay, good.
yes.
Yeah, that's quite interesting take you have. Now you are into curriculum development and mostly into education, the methodologies, the paradigms, and all that. In recent times, there is also a talk about religious texts being taught in schools, and then one of the reasons why that idea is mooted is because of the overall deteriorating moral values, declining moral values in society. So therefore, there is also move to introduce teachings from religious texts. Have you ever reflected on this issue? As one who is into developing the curriculums, contents, and doing some projects and all that.
Sir, I think this will be again a very progressive step, provided we do it in the ambit of the constitutional secularism that we talk about. If we are trying to profess values through this aspect, I think the constitution does not hinder using these texts, provided it is acted in a not state-sponsored manner, which is only promoting one religion. If it is promoting all religions in this aspects, it can be definitely done in the country. So my view aligns with this, and other aspect is making I think I find religion to be very handful for conducting one's life as well as for the administration as well. So my views align with this aspect, provided they are as per the principles enshrined in the constitution.
Now, there is also one view that, let's say, if Quran is taught in madrasas and if Bible is taught in some schools, but at the same time, if Bhagavad Gita is taught in schools, then it is generally being branded as being communal. There is some kind of a narrative which is now circulating in society. Why does that happen actually? Why does it happen actually?
Sir, it's kind of reflective of our society. The people at time get attracted by these issues that are highlighted, number one. And sir, secondly, when we talk about, I think we have to also distinguish between the kind of institution. Like if we talk about madrasas, I think they are managed by the particular religion, and under Article 29 and 30, they can definitely have their own courses in this regard. And when it comes to about issues like Bhagavad Gita, I think you would be referring to a publicly aided school in this regard, where it might definitely, if state is promoting it, it might definitely be objected. But provided the parents are not having objection, and it is not undertaken to profess religion, but with the objective of imbibing values, I think we can definitely go with such practices. And in fact, from my own experience, I can say that the prayer that we used to have in army schools in the morning, they were definitely having a tinge of Hinduism, but they never propagated or professed religion through it. The objective was to have a value-based education system for all.
Okay, good. I also find that you have just spoken about your interest in agroforestry. Is it such an exciting idea? And are you aware of any national policy on agroforestry?
Yes, sir, we have in fact, we were the first nation to have a national policy with respect to agroforestry, whereby we have the objective is to promote the practices of agroforestry, so that apart from ecological benefit it gives, it also helps in the economical upliftment of the farmers.
Okay.
It helps in diversification of agriculture. So the objectives are along these lines. And sir, coming to the other part of the question, yes, it is definitely one of the options that we can go for in terms of diversification our farm incomes. But I don't think that it is an practice which is not having its challenges. It definitely has some challenges, and we have to overcome those if we have to make it popular.
Ideally, who can practice this? What size of farm is required for this, and what are the practical challenges that you have seen, in adopting or following agroforestry?
Sir, if I talk from my own experience, one
Yeah.
challenge is with respect to it requires a kind of investment. Even if you talk like crops like popular, you will get a return after 6 to 7 years. And if you go for other crops like teak sesame, it will become even more like 15 to 20 years. And for a small and marginal farmer, it's a very significant duration for which he will have to
Yeah,
wait.
yeah.
The other aspect is, sir, which practically I have seen myself, like when we go for trees like this, there's significant issue in terms of carrying out the agricultural practice simultaneously,
Yeah.
because it increases the labor force that is required for regular clearing of leaves that fall on the ground and other aspects. So this is
Yeah.
some practical challenge I have seen myself.
And have you come across this phenomenon called allelopathy as part of agroforestry?
Sir, I've read about it. In this regard, they undertake 2 crops such that one crop's chemical secretions will be having some effect on the other crop.
Okay. What kind of effect does it have? Positive or negative?
Sir, I think in allelopathy, it has a positive effect in terms of promoting the other one's growth.
No, it is actually the other way around.
I'm sorry, sir. Then I cannot.
The two species will be inimical to each other. So one inhibits the growth of the other. In fact, it is the other way around. Anyway,
Thank you, sir.
that was very good speaking with you, Pulkit. My co-panelists will continue the conversation with you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Pulkit Singh,
Good morning, sir.
good morning. Just now we have been talking about the farmers issue on the 3 farm laws. Pulkit, tell us, what is your stand? Whether you support the agitation of the farmers or you are opposing the agitation of the farmers?
Sir, I have a neutral view with respect to this, because I do find that the farmers initially had a valid argument with respect to their grievances in the laws. But at the same time, after the process that the government had undertaken, and it was willing to amend it as per their demands, but they have been very reluctant after that, so as to arrive at a rational solution to the radical changes that the government was seeking in terms of the entire agricultural sector.
But in the recent offer by the government, stating that they are going to have a dialogue, but they said that except the 3 laws, so they don't want to change any word in the law, but they want to have negotiations. So is it fair, or what you say is that government is willing to discuss except the 3 laws? They want to discuss something else. In that issue, what is your view? So whether the farmers are going to accept the offer of the government?
Sir, I'm not very particular that whether they have taken out the 3 laws from the negotiations, but what I believe, from what I can recall, the government had said that they will be willing to accommodate their grievances or the specific issues that they have with respect to the farm laws and present an amended form of that. And so this is which I can recall this. And if we talk about the negotiations, definitely when they are going forward with their negotiations, they cannot talk about the other aspects of agriculture without looking at these 3 laws, because marketing as such is very essential part of agriculture. And I don't think even if they go for negotiations and they are outrightly saying that they will be taking out these 3 laws out of the discussion, it will not be possible for both the sides.
Okay, Pulkit, tell us the 3 agricultural laws made by the parliament. They were passed by the parliament. Now tell us whether the parliament has got any right to pass the laws on agriculture, because agriculture comes under the state law. So under which pretext or condition these laws were made by the government of India?
Sir, when we talk about the concurrent list, when it comes to contracts enforcement, it comes under it. And by taking a cue from this item in the concurrent list, the government has said that it is part of the marketing operation. So it can definitely go for legislation on this. And even the constitution says that we go for harmonization of various interpretations by one of the Supreme Court judgments. And seeing this, it has taken this step so that it is going into the ambit of agriculture. And yes, there is definitely a debate with respect to whether it was in its ambit under the federal structure, but this was the argument presented by government in this regard.
So what is your view? Is it fair on the part of the government of India to go for these laws?
Sir, my view is that the interpretation that they are giving, that contracts is part of the concurrent list, I find that it can be extended in this respect, because marketing and other the Essential Commodities Act, they can definitely interpreted being part of it. And apart from my personal view, I think Supreme Court will be the end interpreter in this regard. So, and it is still awaited that what will be the view in this regard.
Okay. Pulkit, you are brought up in the culture of the army, the defense. I think you are well familiar with the different ranks in the army.
Yes, I am familiar, although I'm not very. It's been long time that I was exposed to such ranks, but I can recall it if I want to.
So what is the ranking system in the army?
Sir, it starts with the other non-commissioned officers, NCOs, Sipai, and Lasnaik, Naik, Havaldar. Then it comes the non-commissioned officer, junior commissioned officers, JCOs. In this regard, Naib Subedar, Subedar. Then they start with the hierarchy of officers. It starts with, I think, lieutenant. And then in between, we are having various, I cannot recall the exact hierarchy in this regard. There are various ranks like colonel, major. And then we have gradually, which goes into the major general, and then finally into general, who is seen as the person with at the topmost in the hierarchy.
So why there is a difference between this commissioned and non-commissioned ranks?
Sir, the difference lies in respect of when we talk about commissioned rank, they are seen as officers or person having more responsibility vis-a-vis the other part of the army, that is the non-commissioned officers, the NCOs. And because of this distinction, we are having, as it goes in any institution, we are having very few who are having given the responsibilities and a large force which works under it. So this distinction, I think, is going on that institutional lines that we see in any kind of institution.
So for the Army, Navy, or the Air Force, the ammunition comes from the ordnance factories. You are aware of the ordnance factories?
Yes, sir. In fact, I was very fortunate when we lived in Jabalpur. We lived in the vicinity of the Khamaria factory.
Achha, you are in Khamaria. I was in YFJ. Yeah. Now tell us, Pulkit, there is a move for the corporatization of these ordnance factories. What exactly is corporatization?
Sir, I could not hear your last question, sir.
Yeah, so there was a recent move by the government of India to corporatize the ordnance factories. What exactly the move, and what is its impact?
Sir, the move is with respect to bringing more efficiency in the functioning of the ordnance factories. So they will be having a kind of corporate structure in this regard, vis-a-vis the structure that we are having right now, and whereby it is kind of differentiating between the various factories across the country, so that they are more focused with respect to the products that they are dealing with. And its impact is, the biggest impact is with respect to government has to sensitize, especially it's the working force, that it is not step, or it is not the part of the overall policy of privatization, but a step in order to bring out reforms in the working of the ordnance factory.
So what are the concerns of the others, especially the people working in these factories?
Sir, their concern is with respect to that after these reforms, it will be gradually going into privatization, and then they might not have the benefits that they were promised when they joined the forces as a civil servant in this regard. So they will be again having a kind of lifestyle that we can associate with the private sector. And apart from this, they also believe that their other benefits, like in terms of their pension, gratitude, and other aspects, they will be also diluted significantly.
So in the pandemic period, the ordnance factory has done wonderful work. So they have brought a lot of what we can say services to the people.
Sorry, sir.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Pardon me, sir. Yes, sir, you are audible, but your voice is breaking, sir. If possible, you can repeat the question.
Yeah. During this pandemic period, ordnance factories did wonderful work in helping the people. So can you bring out some measures taken by ordnance factories for helping the public to control the pandemic and, of course, come out of this?
Sir, maybe I cannot recall the exact contribution, but if you permit me, I can take guess from what I can recall right now. I think one could be with respect to installment of various devices which were operated by FIT, so that it reduces the use of hand in that aspect. Another I could identify could be with respect of providing the facilities at hospitals in terms of movement of the patients, but I'm not very sure. I'm just trying to connect the kind of work Ordnance Factory does, because I'm not very averse with specific contribution by Ordnance Factory.
Okay, my last question to you is regarding this agroforestry. Many questions were asked. I would like to know about from you. Then how does it contribute to the sustainable agri systems?
Sir, its contribution to sustainable agri system could be seen through promoting tree cover that it helps. If I can quote from Haryana's example, its forest cover is only about 3.6% of the area. But when you talk about tree cover, by including practices like social forestry, agroforestry, it goes to as high as 6.9%. So it helps in bridging that aspect. It helps in bringing a change in the microclimate, which significantly helps contribute towards it, and also helps in terms of promoting the income of the farmers, which indirectly will help in terms of they adopting better practices which are having less ecological impact.
It's nice talking to you, Mr. Pulkit, or to Sri Somshekhar-ji.
Thank you, sir.
Very good morning, Pulkit Singh.
Good morning, sir.
You have done a dual degree in mechanical engineering.
Yes,
what
sir.
is this dual degree?
Sir, it is a 5-year course whereby we bridge the 4+2, that is 4 years BTech and 2 years master's course into a 5-year course, and they kind of adjust these thing, and the student is awarded with both the degrees at the end of the 5-year term.
That is, you get a master's degree.
Both, sir, graduation BTech degree as well as MTech degree. We are given both of them distinctly.
Okay. What is the advantage of this degree over the other degrees? How does it help you in the market getting jobs or competitively?
Sir, firstly, it reduces the time that you devote in terms of if you're targeting for a master's. Sir, secondly, it also helps you in undertaking projects right from your 3rd year by associating with professors with which you aspire to work in a specific field. And sir, apart from this, I found that it was more of a decision which that landed up because of the rank that I got and the allocation by the process that we have after the joint entrance examination, that I had opted for this degree.
Is it competitive to get into the dual degree? Because a lot of people do this 4-year BTech and then they all want to go away to the US and do a master's and then get into lucrative jobs.
Sir, honestly admitting, yes, people do have this aspiration, but if we talk about MTechs from our country, they do not have this tendency to go for it. And in fact, from my own experience, from some of my classmates who had gone abroad, despite having a master's degree, when they want to enroll for PhD, they were suggested to have a MTech degree there again. So this is the harsh reality that we are having with respect to this.
Okay. Now you did a year in this gas turbine research establishment in Bangalore, part of the DRDO laboratories. What was your responsibility? Which project did you work there?
Sir, I was working specifically with respect to heat and mass transfer division. Yes, I was working on a project with respect to cooling of the turbine blade, which sees a temperature of around 2000 Kelvin. And this is a very significant in terms of material properties, it changes, it undergoes. So what they do is they alternatively look for cooling the turbine blade so that they can reduce the impact of such high temperature gradients.
So, now you must be, conversant with the indigenous Kaveri engine development project, which is the main mandate of the GTR. Now, what is the story? What is the controversy? Why it is not fructified? You have any insight into this, or generally, what is your take on the problems for this indigenous engine? Because it's very critical in a LCA.
It's very unfortunate that the kind of time delay that we have seen in this project. But if I empathize with the problems that our scientists are facing is from the aspect of, first, the engine technology is very high-end technology. Significant developments are needed in basic sciences as well, especially in terms of material sciences, where we as a country, we are lagging somewhere. And sir, some of the specific issues, when I was there, they had identified around 9 specific issues with respect to it. Most of them were dealing with the suitability of a temperature at a high temperature, the vibrations that the engine undergoes at those temperatures, and especially with respect to the functioning of the afterburner. So they have undertaken some tests in this regard, but they don't find it safe enough to have a flyability. So because of which having significant challenge right now.
Okay. So your dad is in the armed forces. He is perhaps one of the users of products developed by DRDO, and you did the other side of research. After I think 33, 34 years, the LCA project finally took the GE engine, and then they flew, and then the whole thing went into a different trip. And the Indian Air Force now is taking in this LCS also Tejas into its force. Now, as a project manager, which you are also doing now, project management, do you think anything could have been done to better manage this program? Because it's now 34 years, and whether you have to give it up or you have to accelerate. Is there anything that you could think of to, accelerate this project and come to some conclusion on this?
Sir, I think the scientists were very dedicated on this task. Now, the challenge that we are facing is that if we start from scratch again, it will be increasing our cost with respect to the project that we are already undertaking. So they are having an approach whereby we try to improve the challenges that they are facing, and significant testing they do undertake on this project. And what I find, sir, if given from my own experience now a chance to start this project right now, I believe I will be definitely looking with respect to, and I'm not sure that because I'm not aware what they had done 30 years ago with respect to it, but some of my findings will be that I will be definitely taking in consultation with some of the various critical aspects like experts in material science, experts in terms of avionics or the electronics that goes into the this technology, and undertaking rigorous testings. And one significant development that I've seen in recent years is that with the coming of the private sector in such areas, definitely their competitiveness could be also robbed in if given a chance to start again.
So, coming to, you're a mechanical engineer, manufacturing, you understand these issues. Now, this defense offset policy that the government announced some years ago, now, has it made any difference in beefing up or strengthening indigenous R&D or indigenous manufacturing strengths in small and major companies through collaborations, or what the offset policy really requires to be done?
So right now, speaking on this aspect, I don't have a very news in terms of significant whereby some form has significantly come up, but yes, there were definitely some kind of aspirations shown with respect to Reliance when it was coming into the aero field. And apart from this, right now, the impact is more diffused, vis-a-vis concentrated in terms of promotion to various SMEs which are working in this field. But at the same time, it has also promoted a number of ancillary industries coming up, which act as a in the part of the supply chain in terms of supplying the various components that are required in this. And even recently, when we talk about the strategic partnership that the government had aspired along these lines, even it is also seeing some kind of traction, especially when it comes to shipbuilding. So yes, definitely we have challenges, but I think it will be fructifying in some results in coming years, and it will be more augmented if some kind of a significant players come in this regard. After how it have shaped with Reliance, I think someone else has to step in. And one form I can identify is L&T is significantly working in this regard. So I find that yes, it is going on the lines, but as of now, I may not have something to share which is very significant we have achieved.
Do you think the participation of private sector in defense, especially some of these projects of key importance, is good? It should the DRDO and the private sector have enough trust so that you accelerate this project, or is there a mistrust? Should there be any demarcation of so and so project should not be done by private sector?
Sir, I think yes, strategic significance should always be a concern. But if I can quote example of France, Rafale is a private organization, and there are other, in fact, 90% of France own dependencies on its own private sector. And whenever we talk about deals happening with such countries, the government always steps in that aspect. So I believe if the kind of regulations that we can have, definitely we can control the strategic significance of those aspects. And when we talk about the importance of private sector, it always brings in competitiveness. And the recent technology advances are somehow diffused even in the public sector by looking in this aspect. So I definitely align with the policy that we should go for privatization even in the defense sector. And we already, even India has seen the benefits when we talk about the space, because of the kind of the private organization that had come up in space. We have seen significant achievements in the space technology also.
Okay. You also know a lot about Panchkula. What is the name derived from? What does it mean?
Sir, it's derived from Panch and Kula. Panch is 5 and Kulas are irrigation canals. So it comes from that, and it is believed that there were set of canals which took the water from the Ghaggar river to the more far off areas in this particular part.
And interestingly, Panchkula has become a hub for IT companies, information technology companies. What is the reason? What is the strength of Panchkula to attract IT companies there?
Sir, the strength is the city is very planned, and it provides a refuge from the stress that we see in the erstwhile, like the Gurgaon or Bengaluru. They are facing significant challenge in terms of providing an very amiable environment for the people working. And apart from this, even the government here is promoting coming up of such industries. They have a dedicated industrial area for this to come up, and it's adjacent Chandigarh, or in fact the entire Tri-City area can be seen as an integrated part even when we talk about expanding.
Why not Mohali, or why not Chandigarh itself, which are very planned also?
Sir, this is the difference that comes with the role of the state governments. Haryana government is extending certain benefits to them in order to promote it, to promote the employment opportunities in the state. So because of, I think, this differential, we could identify the difference.
So finally, if you look at Noida and Gurugram, which are, competing, or, how would you attract industries away from these two, hubs for IT? They're very developed. There are a lot of advantages having an address in Noida or Gurugram compared to Panchkula. How would you, given a responsibility, attract more companies to Panchkula?
Sir, in this regard, if given an opportunity to work on these lines, I will go the kind of growth these hubs have seen. If we talk about Bangalore, it is about Infosys coming there. If we talk about Gurgaon's growth, it was about Maruti coming initially and thereafter other firms. So I will definitely target some big name coming in this respect, coming there, and the kind of infrastructure it has, it will definitely attract other aspects, because I have seen that even the software industry develops like the traditional manufacturing industry in conglomerations, in aggregates. So my suggestion could be along these lines, that somehow we need to attract some big player in this aspect, which will definitely bring in others as well.
So nice talking to you.
Thank you, sir.
Good, Pulkit. We have spent about an hour and 9 minutes,
Yes, sir.
which is extremely long when compared to the actual duration of the interview in the UPSC Dholpur House. They don't take more than 20 or 25 minutes. So we found you very interesting, and therefore this very prolonged kind of an interaction. Now we'll give you one after the other our perspective on how the personality test has gone. I'll start with mine. On the whole, you appear to be very balanced, mature. You are good in communications. You are able to speak calmly, and your rate of flow of words is more or less ideal. You're not speaking too fast, nor are you speaking too slow. Except one small error where you mistook the maximum to mean minimum in the MSP. Otherwise, there were hardly any factual mistakes. Perceptive mistakes there might be. That depends on the point of view. Even that very difficult question of teaching Bhagavad Gita in schools, you did say that it may not be possible if it's a government-run school. And of course, then you quoted your own army public school where you had a prayer which had some component of Hinduism. These are difficult questions. So you did steer your answers through very careful. They are all minefields, but very carefully you avoided any accidental explosion. And I must compliment you on that. By and large, I have nothing to point out by way of the areas where you need to work on. But I'm sure my co-panelists will be able to identify some areas where you need to work on. And at the end of all this, I will again give you an opportunity to ask us anything else that you feel like asking us. Okay, now I'll hand you over to Dr. Gopal, who was our Chief Secretary.
Yes, sir.
Gopal.
Yeah, Mr. Pulkit Singh.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I fully agree with what the chairman had observed, and I just wanted to respond to 3 or 4 ways of your answering, or 3 or 4 answers that you gave as to how they could be different. So firstly, of course, you are quite cheerful, you are communicating very well. One is that you have a tendency to come to conclusions very quickly. I mean, it's not a generalized statement, but here and there. For instance, when it came to smart city and Panchakula, while you need to have respect for your own city and its planning, and I agree, it's like Chandigarh, it's a very well planned city. But planning and building a capital asset is one thing, and subsequently maintaining that asset is other thing. So generally in the country, towns, while the planning went on very well, the construction went off very well, but when it came to maintenance, it's the question of collection of user charges and spending the user charges on proper maintenance. So you don't have to defend Panchakula so much that it doesn't require to be treated as a smart city to get additional funds. then relatively okay. It's better because of well-planned city. It has its own advantages. So that retrofitting of the roads, widening, etc., which happens in congested cities, is not required in a city like yours. So such a qualified statement will do well in your responses. Okay, then second, see, we are expected to criticize you.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, I'm looking forward to that only, because it will be more helpful for.
Yeah. You make use of these inputs for improving, building on your strengths.
Yes, sir.
So then a question of common sense replies. When I asked you where do you go in case the builders or customers are not satisfied with the real estate that regulatory authorities decision, the common sense reply would be they would go in for appeal. Then instead of saying that, you said they will go in appeal to High Court or some other judicial forum, filing SLP. See, all that is redundant. It's not required. If you say it's a common sense reply, they are not happy, they will go to higher authority in appeal. That's all. Then if the question is which is the higher authority or appellate authority, if you know about real estate regulatory appellate authority, you could respond. Otherwise, you may say, sir, I'm not very sure. Instead of directly getting into High Court, which is the wrong answer actually. The first stage of appeal lies with. So that's for your
Incidentally, he used a phrase called SLP, special leave petition, which exists only Supreme Court only.
Yeah.
High courts don't have SLP.
Yeah.
So anyway, he needlessly opened a weak spot in his.
So try to avoid the Pulkit Singh.
Sure, sir.
It is avoidable. I mean, that is avoidable. So please be aware of it. Then your answers are, about dual degree or realistic answers. Then one more correction is, you said there is something in concurrent list about agreements. The agreements are covered in concurrent list. Actually, agreements of interstate trade and commerce. The subject in concurrent list is in the context of, that agricultural laws. You said these agreements in defense of the government. You also very rightly said government says this. You also said it is debatable. While saying so, you said the agreements come under concurrent list. Actually, it is not the agreement per se which comes under concurrent list, but it is interstate trade and commerce and the agricultural prices commission. This under 7 schedule, some articles are there. So they come under. So therefore, Government of India said, while you said it is debatable, while you also said it is Government of India's stake, very rightly. So it's not agreement, but interstate trade and commerce is the subject which comes under concurrent list. Okay. Then finally, while many occasions while saying that I'm not very sure, but if you permit, let me guess, and you went on guessing and answering. It's not required.
Sure.
Say I'm not very sure, and if you really want to guess once or twice, you could ask the interviewer whether you could guess. Then you must continue with the answer instead of answering whatever you knew by way of guess. So that also can be avoided. So these are the inputs I wanted to give you, because otherwise you have done extremely well and you are a potential candidate. So just reflect on this, go back and see your recorded interview, and then see where what I said could be applied differently to your answers. Okay, wish you all the best.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Very good.
Yeah, Pulkit, broadly I find you quite a competent candidate for civil services.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and your articulation is good. As the chairman said, the flow at which you are speaking is quite ideal, and it makes the other person, they understand what you are saying clearly, and clarity of mind with which you are, expressing yourself comes across very clearly. Broadly speaking, I have nothing much to point out, except, unless it would seem like nitpicking. But then here and there, a few expressions have gone wrong. You were saying while talking to our first member about MSP and all that, you were saying about MSP, probably you meant talking about MSP. Okay, a few things like that. They might look like nitpicking, but then if you can avoid that,
Sure, sir, it will definitely.
Yeah, the overall impact will be much better. And then on issues like your father being your icon and your attempt at defense, and of course one aspect which chairman had already handled, the teaching of religious texts in schools and all that. You navigated those issues quite diplomatically and quite well. You have practically taken the middle of the road path, which is the ideal approach. And I was still wondering actually, why NCC cannot be made more useful to society. I still find that NCC as an institution, as an organization, with all its lofty ideals, probably remains unexploited. Its potential for doing good for society probably remains grossly underutilized. Except that those who join NCC and get those A certificate, C certificate, and all that, they get some reservations in jobs and probably somewhere in some employment and all that, or some admission into colleges and all. But if you look at them as a vast pool of human resources trained in lofty ideals, they can bring in a lot of energy, positive energy into society. Particularly on issues like communal amity and all that. Of course, at school level they are too young to spread that kind of a message. But then, if someone is in undergraduate course and then still doing NCC and all that, during those troubled times, probably they still remain in colleges or hostels. I have not come across any NCC guy being sent to a troubled area, to assist either the police or the civil administration and all that. Is it your experience?
No, sir. And to be very honest, I've also not seen any.
See, what are we doing with that, vast pool of human resources? To have those, training in keeping society intact, keeping peace and tranquility in society intact, and capable of, spreading good message across. It remains vastly untapped. So this is something which that can be made part of your suggestion for improving the effectiveness of NCC. And then, but otherwise, of course, one aspect which immediately I corrected you, allelopathy, of course, you took the other side. In fact, allelopathy is that those trees produce chemicals which inhibit the growth of the other plants. They actually are having a negative impact on other plants. But otherwise, broadly speaking, you are quite a good material. And I find that this is your which attempt? Third attempt, right?
Third attempt. Sir.
Yeah. And probably the first interview?
No, sir. I have given into both the times before as well.
Oh, good. That's good. That's good. I think you should be able to make it this time.
Thank you, sir.
That's my hunch. Okay. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Pulkit, I agree with the chairman on the feedback given to you. Apart from that, there are three issues which I would like to discuss with you. I brought the agricultural laws intentionally. So the point is, while you were answering our Gopal sir, what the impression I got by your reply was that you are not sympathetic towards the farmers. So you are almost an advocate on behalf of the government of India. So that's the reason I again brought this discussion, so that whether you can change anything or whether you can show any empathy towards them. But what I observed is, by the discussion which I had with you, that you are slightly away from the cause of the farmers. I don't know why you have taken that stand. But of course, think about this. The kind of answers what you have given to us, gives an impression that you are not in sympathy with the farmers. Because what you said while you are answering to me, initially I was with the farmers. So that word initially you said, that means later I think you changed your view on the farmers. So this is the aspect, just you think about it. And coming to these 3 agro laws, they come under the second list under entry 14. Whereas the government of India brought these laws under entry 33. Entry 33 is entirely different from agriculture. That's the foodstuffs. Foodstuffs are different and agri aspects are different. So as you rightly said, of course, the Supreme Court of India is going to intervene and they are going to give the judgment. But the point here is the central government has taken a stand, which according to some of the experts, don't say that according to me, experts, it is going out of its purview. So that's the reason the farmers are against the laws, and they are also going for this type of agitation. And while the farmers are going for the agitation, I think we must also understand why the poor farmers are continuing the agitation for months together. It is not without cause. So that sympathetic aspect which we require from your point of view. The second aspect is about the army ranks. Of course, you have given, but as far as the army is concerned, in the commission ranks, so it starts with a lieutenant, captain, major, that is called lieutenant colonel, colonel, brigadier, major general, lieutenant general, general, and field marshal. Field marshal was very rare. So that is the order. Because you are from that background, you may be sure about these things. Who knows? A person like me may be there in the board. We'll be interested to know about your understanding about the ranks. Interestingly, the category that is called the Subedar. Subedar comes under junior commission ranks. So the commissioned and non-commissioned, it is only a promotion. So gazetted and non-gazetted like that. Okay. So coming to the third aspect about the
just a small correction. Even in the JCOs in Army or senior non-commissioned officers in Air Force, there are gazetted officers.
Yes, sir. Group B, sir.
Group B,
Group B, Group B, sir.
Yeah.
So that
the difference is commissioned officers are commissioned by President of India. Their order comes from the
Group
President.
B and Group B like that. That will be there. That junior, sir.
Yeah.
And the non-commissioner not gazetted.
Yeah. No. The senior non-commissioned officers, as they are called SNCOs in Air Force,
sir,
and JCOs in Army.
Yes, sir.
Now, JCO, senior non-commissioned officers, Subedar Major, Havaldar Majors, they are like warrant officers, master warrant officers in Air Force. Sir. They are gazetted officers. But all commissioned officers are gazetted officers.
Yeah, here only that's the major.
Yes. But President of India appoints the President of India commissions the commissioned officers. I mean, technically. Otherwise,
yes. Good. Yes. The third one is about the ordnance factories, because you stayed in the ordnance factories. My junior, Mr. Harimohan, he did a lot of work on because he became the board chairman, and I took a lot of the proactive steps in the case of the pandemic. So he started with the sanitization process, first of all, and the PPE kits. And in fact, the testing equipment was also prepared by the ordnance factory companies, ventilators, ICUs, and they also prepared beds. A lot of things were done by the 41 ordnance factories. I think from Aravankadu to almost Kanpur. All these ordnance factories, they participated in this particular issue. And that we cannot forget, because today government is doing tremendous work as far as this pandemic is concerned. And apart from the Army, Navy, and the Air Force, but the ordnance factories also contribute a lot for controlling the pandemic. So from that point of view also, we can give our contributions. As a son of the defense forces, we can proudly say that they also contributed for the control of the pandemic. So these are the issues. Other than this, I think your replies are very balanced. You are very measured in your replies. I wish that you must get into the list at the top. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Pulkit, I think I find you quite smart, appropriately dressed, include clarity in thought in terms of answering issues. I think you have definitely improved on your earlier experience at the interview, and I wish you improve further on the suggestions given by our co-panelists. Only one aspect which I would like to delve is on this role of private sector in defense. You seem to be weighing in heavily on private role, but if you look at the ground reality, there are many SMEs involved, and very few top companies like L&T, Godrej, Walchand Nagar as of now. But the strengths in manufacturing and then the weaknesses you said about sensors, key electronics and all remain a cause of concern. They are very, very critical in many of these strategic projects. So I think you need to develop this base with good engineers within the domestic sector through perhaps partnerships between DRDO and private Indian industry. So I think you need to look at it. And what is the role of defense offset, whether it is really doing this or bringing in MNCs or big defense giants into this country. They are parking and taking away our own strength of talent. That is one issue. And on the Panchkula IT thing, I think you have rightly got on to how to promote it by having an anchor company and then attracting more. I think that's a good approach, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir.
Pulkit, you have heard the feedback from all of us. At the end of that, is there anything you want to ask us?
No, sir, I'll definitely work on whatever suggestions are given to me and try to improve in this aspects.
बहुत अच्छा. इंटरव्यू कब है?
Sir, 27th August.
Plenty of time.
Yes, sir.
Okay then. All the best. God bless you.
Thank you, sir.